What percentage of your trades are defined versus undefined risk, Mikey? What would you say?
I would say I've got about 70% defined risk and 30% undefined risk.
Okay.
I think that has a lot to do with account size too.
Yeah, because I was going to say mine is about flipped of that.
Yeah. Ideally, I mean, it's the larger account, the more money you have, the more you can sell undefined risk, and you have the ability to have a lot of flexibility with that. But if you have a limited account size, defined risk is you can still take advantage of high implied volatility. You can manage your risk effectively and take your shots where you want them. But yeah, I would also bucketize them in like the equity space. I'm almost all defined risk, and the ETF space or the index space, I'm undefined risk there if I can afford to do it, just because it's much easier to manage like the micro mini position or IBIT. Like it's a lot easier to manage with these moves because the moves are a lot less drastic. Even now where the market's flying around, the moves are a lot less drastic than any equity, really.
Yeah. I would say I totally agree. I think the account size situation is the main factor here. Larger size accounts, you have the flexibility, especially if you're in like a portfolio margin account where naked positions might even use less buying power than defined risk positions. So yeah, I'm probably 70-30 in terms of undefined versus defined risk trades in my short premium positions. Like we're talking like iron condors versus strangles. I'm 70-30. I do a lot of defined risk trades like the diagonal spreads, even like a crab trade, I guess, is if you're buying the wing, it's defined risk. If you're doing just the 1x2, which is what I do a little bit more, you have naked risk, but it's naked tail risk. And so a lot of my trading is defined risk, even though I am in a larger sized account.
Love it. Do you think strangles are safe in a stock that's been knocked down 50%? Or am I better off just selling the put?
Do I think they're safe? If I had a crystal ball, I would be more confident in this. I mean, I like to lean into directional moves. So something like Microsoft, I'm not selling a strangle. I'm just selling the puts. That has not worked for the last 2, 3, 4 weeks because the stock has just gone down. And so, was that a safe play? I mean, I'm at the 350 strike in May. It seems safe to me, but that can certainly change. So safe is a tough word to put in here. I would just say, I tend to like to lean into directional moves in both directions. I like to get short on things that are going higher. I get long things that are going lower. That's how I trade around positions. If you feel better with a long delta skewed strangle, go for it. If you feel better with the neutral strangle, I think that's in play too. As long as implied volatility is high, you can justify doing any sort of short premium position that you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, and I think even if you do a strangle that's neutral, you can shift it up. Like if you get tested on the upside, you can move the thing higher to offset some of that risk. It's just harder to do if there's a violent move higher. And I think also, if you're selling a strangle in an earnings cycle, I'm usually just going to sell the put because that implied volatility usually waits to go away and the premium waits to go away until the earnings announcements actually happens. Yeah. But also it's a matter of premium as well. Like if you're collecting $5 in a put and you're selling a call for 50 cents, just get rid of the call and move your put up a half strike or one strike and you'll get the same premium and you'll have no upside risk. So I think that's another thing to consider too, the value of each side.
Very good. Next one, please. You guys were discussing the silver and gold ratio yesterday morning. So this was Jamal and I. So you're going to have to catch up here. Did you mean to imply you only trade those products when the ratio is out of its normal range? I guess I'm trying to understand why one might care about the ratio unless they rely on it as a trading signal.
Yeah, I don't think you need to trade the ratio by itself. I think you can get long or short gold or silver at any point in time if you wanted to just trade that isolation. But The nice thing about these products, specifically gold and silver, is that there's plenty of historical data.
Yeah.
And when you trade a pair that is out of whack, it also softens the implied risk of each of those parts.
Yes.
So like if you're getting long gold and short silver at extremes in their relationship, just because you're long gold and short silver, like if the relationship gets more out of whack, your implied risk is less than if you just took one side.
Yes.
So
and the implied reward too is
Yeah.
going to be lesser too.
Yeah.
It's a good call out because the volatility of silver is typically higher than the volatility of gold, and the products themselves typically have a high correlation. They don't have the same sort of magnitude. Like today, you have gold up 3.64% and silver up 5.4%. And so that ratio, the ratio of gold to silver, is moving about 2%, assuming you got in right at midnight last night. That's what it's measuring off of, just the start of today. That ratio has moved 2%. The ratio itself tells you a lot about the move in the two products. So gold and silver, currently the ratio is about 62 ounces of silver to 1 ounce of gold. That's how many ounces of to equal each other in terms of notional value. And that ratio trades, right? So it moves. It got as low as 48.50 ounces of silver to 1 ounce of gold. That tells you that gold is coming down or silver is going up. One of the two has happened over that period of time. Historically, I know when that happened, I was like, oh, this has to be an extreme. And people were like, the 100-year average is around 40 or like 45, 50. Like the 40 to 50 is the 100-year average. And I was like, 100 years, come on, guys. We can't go back to the Hunt brothers here, like spoofing markets. But that is something to keep in mind. In the more recent history, meaning like the last, 7, 8 years, it's traded more towards like 100. Like that's 90 to 100 ounces of silver to every 1 ounce of gold. And so obviously that ratio can change, but that's why you're trading it. You're trading the two products that typically have a very high correlation, that have different betas. They move in different magnitudes, but are tied together. So it's a way, as Mikey said, to hedge volatility, to hedge the position in general. You're not just long one of the assets, you're long or short the relationship of those two assets.
Love it. Do you have a preference between trading futures or individual stocks?
I would say for a scalp, I'm using futures. I would say in general, prior to the morning session takeover that I've experienced over the last couple months, futures were not a big part of my trading. They've gotten to be a bigger part of my trading just as an engagement tool, and just sometimes you just want to kind of trade what's happening in the market, and that's an account size thing. That's a time in markets kind of thing. So I would say from a static delta perspective, certainly futures over stock trading. I would say from an option perspective, I much prefer straight up stock options.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there's a time and place for futures. And just like we say this all the time, but like when implied volatility spikes, we're going to be trading the E-minis, the NASDAQ, SPY, QQQ a lot more than when implied volatility is in the teens, because when implied volatility is really low, to get high implied volatility environments, you have to go to the equities, or you're more inclined to go to the equities because you can fabricate those high IV environments because equities just have higher implied volatility.
For sure. Good stuff.